for Monday, January 13th at 3 p.m. Sorry, Jody, I'm jumping. Need your notes? Or you got them?
I got it. Please note, council meetings are streamed live and recorded on YouTube. Attendees acknowledge that in accordance with Section 17.2 of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, names, addresses, and other details provided when speaking at a council meeting will be publicly shared. Should you have any questions related to the collection or disclosure of personal information, please contact the Legislative and Advisory Services Division for the Town of High River by sending an email to foip@highriver.ca.
Thanks, Jody. Adoption of the agenda for today's meeting. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Barton that Council adopt the agenda for the regular Council meeting January 13th, 2025 as presented.
Yeah, my motion, Mayor.
Good. All in favor? Carried. Previous meeting minutes from December 9th. Ask for a motion from Councillor Jones that Council adopts the December 9th, 2024 regular Council meeting minutes as presented.
I'll give you that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. First item of business is bylaw 4640-2025, the solid waste management bylaw. Riley?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So before you is a minor update with regards to the solid waste management bylaw. During our education campaign, 2 items were highlighted to us that needed a small revision. The first being with regards to storage of the bins. The bylaw read stored out of sight on premise, and that will be changed to stored on premise. So the out of sight part has been removed. And then secondly, the carts should be placed individually, but not together. That was problematic in some neighborhoods, so that will be changed to read where possible. So for example, in some of the condo developments, it's hard to get the spacing. So just those 2 minor changes before you today. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Riley. Any questions from Council? It's pretty simple amendments. Councillor Nychuk.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Yeah, pretty simple and straightforward. In terms of us requesting bins to be kind of tucked away and hidden before, I'm assuming then the good neighbor bylaw steps in if people are unattending their trash bins and it's visibly whatever, discouraging to a neighbor or something, they're letting their garbage spill out from their can on their premise. I would think that us hiding it before, that was the idea about it, was to not have it present. So I'm thinking the good neighbor bylaw steps in that regard then if we have issue with somebody keeping an unkept bin.
I can't speak to the good neighbor bylaw. I don't have that on the top of my head. I'd have to get back on that one. But where we were seeing the issue is some people just didn't have an enclosed space to store them, and so that was the challenge with some of this. And then we'd get calls, and they point to the bylaw, of course, saying it has to be inside. And we're saying, well, either they don't have a garage out front, or they don't have space in their garage. So how do we be reasonable about this? So hence the change.
No further questions. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Nychuk that Council give first reading to bylaw 4640-2025 being the solid waste management bylaw, and that Council give second reading to the previously mentioned bylaw, and that Council give unanimous consent to proceed with third and final reading of the previously mentioned bylaw.
I'll give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. All in favor? Carried. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Kinghorn that Council give third and final reading to bylaw 4640-2025 being the solid waste management bylaw, and that Council rescind the previous bylaw 4624-2024.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. You have the motion.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Riley. Bylaw 4638, 2025, the 2025 operating expenditures line of credit bylaw. David?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. You have before you a request for a decision to pass bylaw 4638, 2025, the 2025 operating expenditure line of credit bylaw as required under sections 251 and 256 of the Municipal Government Act. The passing of this bylaw is an annual requirement under the Act. The passing of this bylaw authorizes the town to borrow from the Royal Bank of Canada sums of money from time to meet the current operating expenditures of the town until taxes are collected, provided that the total principal sum owed to RBC at any one time should not exceed the sum of $7 million. Upon passing this bylaw, bylaw 4623, 2024, the 2024 operating line of credit is repealed. As noted within the request for decision, administration recommends the passing of this bylaw. That concludes my comments.
Thanks, David. Annual housekeeping detail that we always have to take care of. Any questions? See none. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Walsh that Council give first reading to bylaw 4638, 2025, the 2025 operating expenditures line of credit bylaw. That Council give second reading previously mentioned bylaw, and that Council give unanimous consent to proceed with third and final reading of the previously mentioned bylaw.
You have that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. We'll ask for a motion from Councillor Smith. The Council give third and final reading to bylaw 4638, 2025, 2025 operating expenditures line of credit bylaw, and that Council repeal bylaw 4623, 2024, the 2024 operating line of credit bylaw.
I'll give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, David. Next one, the supplementary assessment bylaw.
You have before you a request for a decision to pass bylaw 4637, 2025, the 2025 supplementary assessment bylaw as required under Part 9, Division 4 of the Municipal Government Act. The passing of this bylaw before May 1st of each year is an annual requirement under the Act. By passing of this bylaw, or the passing of this bylaw authorizes the town to prepare supplementary assessments for the purpose of imposing a tax under Part 10 of the Act in the same year. A tax that will provide the financial means for the town to continue offering programs and services to the community. Upon passing this bylaw, bylaw 4624, 2024, the 2024 supplementary assessment bylaw is repealed. As noted within the request for decision, administration recommends the passing of this bylaw. And that concludes my comments.
Thanks, David. Any questions? Again, standard January housekeeping. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Barton that Council give first reading to bylaw 4637, 2025, being the supplementary assessment bylaw, and the Council give second reading the previously mentioned bylaw, and that all Council give unanimous consent to proceed with third and final reading of the previously mentioned bylaw.
You have a motion, Mayor?
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Ask for a motion from Councillor Jones that Council give third and final reading to bylaw 4637, 2025, the supplementary assessment, and the Council repeal bylaw 4624, 2024, the 2024 supplementary assessment bylaw.
I'll give you that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, David. 112th Street East area structure plan, scope change. Sarah?
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass and members of council. The report before you today concerns the area structure plan and the functional servicing report project that the town will be taking the lead on in the northeast area of town. The town has been approached by abutting property owners in that area to include additional land within the subject area. Administration is supportive of including this new land within the project. The purpose of this report is to discuss what including this new land would mean for the town and the process, and ultimately to have the town council determine whether they are supportive of the additional land to be included in the project area. Currently, the 112th Street area properties and the properties that are just off of the 20th Street Collector Road are included in the project area. So in total, that land is approximately 92.6 hectares. Abutting property owners, like I mentioned, have approached the town wanting to be a part of this ASP and FSR project. If the new lands were added, then the total project area would go from about 92 hectares to approximately 306.6 hectares. This would be a major project scope change. Therefore, if the town would like to move ahead with this change, council would need to rescind their original motion, which was done on September 23rd, 2024, which awarded the project in its current scope to Tetra Tech, and pass a new motion to direct administration to post a new RFP to include this overall project area of approximately 306 hectares. Administration did consult external legal counsel, and our lawyer did confirm that the town would need to rescind this motion and repost the RFP under these circumstances that we explained to our lawyer. The town administration is supportive of adding this additional land to the project scope. Adding this additional land to be a part of the ASP and FSR project would ensure that the land is considered in a holistic manner, particularly with respect to any potential land use conflict issues, for example, residential versus industrial. If we include all of these areas, then we'll be able to really think about things in an overall holistic manner to ensure that those issues are mitigated as much as we can. Considerations include compliance with the town plan. So there is a section in the town plan about priority growth areas, or PGAs. There's a map which shows the priority growth areas. Those are vacant properties that are either connected to or adjacent to municipal services. So the town plan does direct that growth take advantage of these available development opportunities in the PGAs, but stating that 75% of future growth over the next 20 years should be within those established areas, to ensure that we're filling up land that's already has easy access to services, and while allowing 25% of the growth to be in greenfield areas. Therefore, completing this long-range planning for this area, we believe should come with a disclaimer to this effect, so it is clear. Water capacity, that was also something that was brought up during our internal review of this this application or this proposal. We need to ensure that growth does not impact the ability of the town to provide water servicing to existing development. And finally, the additional land may be affected by the World War II airfield. As a result, administration recommends conducting an environmental assessment, phase 1, as part of the work required by the RFP. So again, administration is very supportive of adding this additional land to the project area, and we do believe that adding this additional land will ensure that the land is considered in a holistic manner, particularly with respect to any type of residential versus industrial conflicts. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Sarah. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I believe it's in the report, but I just wanted to confirm for those present and our listening public. So there's no new extra fees for the current ASP landowners with this change of scope. There will not be an increase to them.
That's correct. As part of the recommendation, I'll just read that relevant part of the recommendation out loud. Part of it is, be it resolved that council rescind their motion from September 23rd, and that council pass a new motion to direct administration to repost the new RFP, including the new project area, and that, and this is the salient part for this discussion, council direct administration to ensure that the cost per hectare will not increase for the property owners that were part of the original ASP FSR request for proposal. This may mean that the newly added property owners will be responsible for a higher cost per hectare. So yes, we are recommending that council lock that price in.
Okay. And the other question that I had was, in rescinding Tetra Tech on this, is there any consequences to us?
Well, we did consult our lawyer. They said that that is the proper procedure. There might be a consequence in that perhaps Tetra Tech is no longer interested in redoing their proposal, so that would be a consequence to the town, potentially losing out on Tetra Tech. However, our lawyer assured us that there would not be any legal consequences because we have not entered into a contract with them.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. A couple of questions. Refresh my memory, the piece of property, or the two pieces actually, it looks like on the northeast corner, a fairly large one, and then right below it is that kind of small pie-shaped piece of property on the map. Are those part of the previous ASP, or are they kind of left out on their own, or what's happening with those two pieces there?
Sorry, the triangle piece is this one, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
so,
more like a pie, but
oh, yes.
don't get a bit picky, just.
Absolutely. So when we're talking about the 20th Street connector piece that's owned by the Callahans, that's the one that we're talking about. So that one was included in the original ASP to include all of this. And then this part, it's owned by Lansdowne Equity.
Sorry, no, I'm just talking about that little piece that looks like a pie, piece of pie.
Oh, down here.
Yeah.
Okay. Chris, do you know who owns that piece?
Because it looks to me, I'm going to support this, but it looks to me like to develop an area of land to have as much inclusivity as you can get from all the landowners makes for a better plan. And even, I'm not sure about the airport lands, why they've chosen not to be part of it, or is there any way we can encourage them so we have a really nice area to work with without chopping out pieces here and there for potentially down the road having some sort of issues?
I agree. It's very unfortunate that the Willow Creek property owner, this little square piece up here, it is unfortunate that they just did not get back to us. Khalid Mohammed reached out to that person a couple of times, and just never was able to commit, unfortunately. I do agree with you that that would be ideal, but I think we've done what we can do to get in contact with that individual, and they certainly are aware of the opportunity.
Thank you.
What pie shape are you talking about? East or west on 5th?
Just
or on 112th?
Straight down from 498, if you follow the, whatever they call that.
South of the little connector.
The little connector, you visualize apple pie,
Yeah.
and it's that piece that looks like it with a curve around the top and it comes
Right.
to a point.
So that's one of the chunks that Callahan's own that is part
Is
of the
it? So
original
it's,
one.
because it's not included inside the pink land, so it was included in the first one?
It's included, yeah, we brought that into the first one because it was those two pieces, that little pie shape and the one above it,
Yeah.
are critical for whatever road intersection piece, so that was brought in on the original
Yeah,
one.
that's why I wanted to ensure it was part of the plan.
And as far as Willow Creek goes, you know, that's, Halid has tried to reach out to them, and you're absolutely right. Very beneficial to the town and everybody else that we get as much as this land into this ASP as possible, but it's also their right whether they want to be a part of it or not. So, if they don't.
Yeah, I was just clarifying that they had the opportunity. We've been pushing them, trying to make it happen, so they can't come back to a future council saying, hey, we didn't know.
Yeah, absolutely. They were made aware of the opportunity and the fact that there will be a cost associated with it. Halid mentioned the current cost per hectare, but of course, we're not able to say what the ultimate cost per hectare is because we haven't reposted the RFP at this point. So yes, unfortunately, we left it that we really did need to hear from them whether or not they wanted to be involved in this project at this point in time rather than after the RFP is posted, because as you can imagine, if you want to include yourself after the RFP is posted, then that's too late. Then your land wouldn't have been included for the consultant's consideration on the budget. So that's where things landed with that matter.
Councillor Nychuk?
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Just trying to formulate where I want to go with this. First off, let's start with the environmental piece.
Okay.
And the environmental assessment, and putting that into the RFP. I'm assuming, because it's not quite spelled out, that if we put that piece into the RFP, the additional landowners considering becoming part of the ASP will bear the cost of that environmental assessment then? Because if this was a developer coming to us with an ASP, that would be part of their cost. But because we're contracting the ASP, so to speak, we're taking that lead role, payment role, so I would assume that that cost would go back to those additional landowners, this parcel around the airport.
That's correct.
Okay.
It would be part of the RFP, which would be borne by all of the landowners on a cost per hectare basis. So you're correct. That the land that may have a contamination matter, may have an environmental issue matter, we're saying that this should be included as the project, not as a separate line item.
Okay, then that leads me to the additional landowners that have come on board or expressed interest. Have they been given a dollar parameter on what this could cost for the ASP to come to fruition? Because I'm just thinking if I'm the landowner and I'm considering this development becoming part of this ASP, there's a cost to doing that. But my checkbook just isn't blank and open to whatever that might be. So do they have some understanding or parameters what this might come out to cost as, or are we going to put this RFP out there, come back with a cost, then we'll go back to them and say, okay, this is what it looks like your portion of X will be. So are you in or you out?
Yes, I understand that. That's a very good question. So the original landowners, like the ones that are on 112th Street and or on the 20th Street connector, they've already been quoted a price per hectare, and we're making a recommendation to council to lock that price in. When we're talking about the other individuals, like LEV and the Popes, they do not have, they know what we're giving the other individuals, but they are aware that we haven't put it out to tender yet. We don't know what different firms are going to come up with, so it is open.
Okay. So we're presumptive then on their participation in the ASP based on the cost that might come forward, right?
Yeah, and absolutely, you're correct. Like, hopefully this isn't the case of what happens, but there is, whenever we put out an RFP again, there's always a risk that no one's going to be interested, or we're only going to get prices that are like significantly higher than when we got previously, or any other items. So you're right to be cognizant of that risk.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it.
The two landowners that I spoke to, Michael, like, they've got a pretty good idea as to what this is gonna cost them, and, you know, them having an ASP done on their property increases the value of their property significantly, so it's an investment on their part. No further questions? I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Nychuk. The council rescind their motion from September 23rd, 2024, which awarded the project to Tetra Tech, and the council pass a new motion to direct administration to post a new RFP, including the new project area in the 112th Street ASP FSR, and the council direct administration to ensure that the cost per hectare will not increase for the property owners that were part of the original ASP FSR on 112th request for proposal. This may mean that the newly added property owners will be responsible for a higher cost per hectare.
Happy to give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Sarah. Boys and Girls Club remediation, Riley.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm here today to give an update on the Boys and Girls Club mold remediation project. So last fall, we discovered mold in the facility. Council approved a budget in September to do the remediation. We have now completed the remediation at a cost of $21,000. And now we're presenting the update as well as next steps for restoration. So remediation in terms of cleaning up the existing mold issues, and then restoration is kind of putting everything back to the way it was. So it's still torn apart from our mold remediation. In November, Boys and Girls Club moved back into the upstairs, but not the basement, because that's where all the damage currently is. So for example, the boys' washroom downstairs is currently stripped. The sump that we had to install to dewater the elevator shaft, which was one of the sources of mold, is just roughed in right now and needs to be completed. I think that's the main component of restoration, and some drywall. And then, so the sources of mold, I mentioned the elevator shaft. The boys' bathroom was also a source of mold. And then there was a third source of mold being the storage room, which was a result of a leaking deck, which had been fixed earlier this year. So with that said, we would like to amend the scope of the original remediation budget to include the restoration works as well as the replacement of the lift. The lift is estimated at $50,000. The restoration is estimated at about $10,000. On a side note, there is still future capital works not anticipated at this time that council will see in likely 2026 as a capital request in the amount of roughly $70,000, because I know there was some concerns in terms of what's the total outlay for the building and is the building worth salvaging. Given those minimal costs and the value of the building being upwards of $1.4 million, administration believes it's worthwhile continuing to repair the building. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Riley. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Riley, for sharing all of this information. It's a mold issue, and that seems like a really, really low estimate to repair. You're confident that it's been thoroughly investigated and...
Yes. So I walked through it myself. Nicole and I went down there and we looked at it.
Thank you.
It was the mold was pretty confined to those 3 spots. It hadn't really spread out. And the boys' one was not a water egress issue. The washroom hadn't been constructed with probably the proper materials to begin with. And you have little boys with bad aim, and we had a mold issue there. Don't shake your head, Chris. It's true. And then like I said, we resolved the deck issue. We knew that one was already an issue. And then the other one was the elevator. And that looks, since we put the sump in, there has been no water entering that shaft. And so it's a matter of making that temporary sump into a permanent structure to keep the water out of there. It looks like because the elevator shaft was slightly deeper than the slab or the elevation of the floor in the basement, that the weeping tile probably wasn't deep enough to pick that up.
Thank you. So with all of these things coming about, I'm glad to hear that we've assessed the value of the building and it is worth continuing to invest in. However, I'd like some confirmation about what its maintenance schedule is and how we're caring for this building, because that's a whole bunch of really expensive repairs to just show up because now we want to use the elevator. So I'm curious about that. In addition to that, the ongoing costs, not just now, but maintenance for an older building going forward, you've already suggested we'll be looking at another capital expense. So to come right back down to it, my immediate thought is that we gave this building to a group at a fee of only $1 per year. Is that reasonable to maintain? Is there a subsidized rate that this group could be looking at? We're continually investing in a facility with absolutely no recovery.
Correct.
That's a concern.
I agree.
So that being said, I'm not saying that we want to put them out of business. Rent can be very expensive. I understand that. But I do feel strongly that there is a more feasible way to manage this financially.
And I can comment on the asset side in terms of the roof was just done, the deck was just done. We have, I think, $70,000 of work for 2026. Beyond that, you're going to be into life cycle maintenance. So it's going to be a ways out before you start looking at the furnaces are fairly new. The roof was just done. We don't foresee any big ticket items in the next, say, 5 or so years. That's
very good. But that being said, in addition, I'd like to note that the reason that we explored reactivating the elevator was so that this group could then rent the downstairs to provide daycare. Is that correct?
They already use the basement as a. Typically, whenever we look at these projects, we try to look at it from an inclusive perspective. And putting the elevator back would be in line with kind of how we approach these things.
Yes.
There is no requirement for that elevator at this time.
So we're meeting the needs of all of the diverse people that are using that area by putting the elevator back? Everybody can then get up?
Everyone can go up and down then, yeah. Because it's just stairs right now to the basement.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. And thank you, Brenda. I think the elevator to me is need versus want, because it is a large expense to be putting in there and something that we don't get any money back out of. When there are, like if you do look at, exterior refinishing, flooring in the basement, lighting, so there is maintenance that needs to be done. I don't know, can you say that there's more of a need versus want on the elevator there? Like the building can be used, and it has been used for many years for the same purpose without the use of the elevator.
That is correct.
Right.
And like I said, there's no legislative requirement to have that. That has been the direction the town has gone with its projects in terms of trying to be inclusive and make sure we can accommodate everybody. but it's not a requirement for this project.
Right. And I
So,
kind of,
yeah, it's really at council's discretion.
right. And I kind of get that maybe for a building that we rent out or a building that we has, I don't know, multiple uses in it. But if they've already used the space and use it without, that's a huge cost for a building that we still have other really important things to refinish and do and maintain at that cost. So I'm just not sure about that.
Who's the number one renter of the facility?
Boys and Girls Club.
Thank you. Councillor Nychuk.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Just to clarify to your question that you just had, Boys and Girls Club is the single renter leaser of the property, right?
That is
There's
correct.
nobody else in there?
No one
They're
else is
exclusive.
in it.
Okay.
Historically,
yeah.
there's been multiple tenants, but right now it's purely
Yeah,
Boys and
just
Girls
to,
Club.
yeah, just to follow up with Councillor Jones's point about use and highest need, highest priority. Coming to the valuation of the building, is that building and land at 1.467 million?
Sorry?
Is that just the building, or is that the building and the land, that valuation? You quoted a valuation of 1.467 million, and kind of alluded to the costs of the repairs or the improvements are commensurate to the valuation of the building. So I'm just asking, is that wood and dirt, or is that just the wood?
That's the building, no dirt. That comes
Building is
from-
worth $1.5 million?
That comes from the insurance assessment on the building, and that's what it's insured for.
Okay, replacement cost.
Replacement cost, correct.
Because we towed that thing onto that property. That was not built there. That was moved on.
Correct. The basement was built there, and then the building was put on top, yeah.
Okay. I don't have any other questions then. I think the lease, that $1 per year, is a conversation outside of this, what do we fix? I don't think that's part of the discussion today, but I'd like that to be brought back to revisit for council and what that should be, because I have an understanding, now this is a rudimentary understanding from other communities, that the Boys and Girls Club actually pays rent or lease of significant more value in other communities. They don't get this $1 a year deal everywhere they are. So I would just like to revisit that, especially since the express purpose of this building is just for that organization. So, thank you.
Jody, you had some info.
Yeah, I just believe I can add some information that possibly answers some of your questions, Councillor Walsh. With regard to the maintenance schedule, so this building the town did inherit in 2019, and I believe we're still doing some catch up on some of the life expectancy work on this facility, as well with the $1 per year rental rate. At the time, this was the same relationship that was held with the previous operators of the facility, and there are requirements within that agreement that they provide a certain number of hours of youth and children programming to sustain that rate. They also have some higher responsibilities regarding maintenance and oversight of the building than some of our other operating agreements. So while their rate that they pay annually is lower, it is compensated in some other areas.
Councillor Walsh.
Thank you. With that being said, thank you very much, Jody. Could you make the user agreement available to us so we can understand all of the moving parts in that? I thank you, Councillor Nychuk, for bringing that forward, that it is a conversation for a different time, but it's one that I would like to see on the agenda in the very near future. I'm not in support of $0 or $1 leases. And if they are coming forward and working in lieu of, that's amazing. That's the kind of community collaboration we should be having, not free. Thank you.
Councillor Nychuk.
I want to ask a question, but maybe it's for that other discussion because this is more about the leasing arrangement than it is about this maintenance piece. So I might hold on to that till later down the road unless you're okay with entertaining me on one question. He doesn't care what I said. Okay, Jody, I'm going to ask it now. You said that kind of in lieu of, they provide programming to youth. So is that free to the community then? Because my understanding is the Boys and Girls Club is a membership organization. So as a parent, you pay for your child to attend the Boys and Girls Club. So this really is about a conversation for another time, but saying that they trade for something, if that's free, that's one thing. If they're charging people to be there, that's another thing. So I just think we need a bigger conversation around this.
So while this is part of a bigger conversation, I think I can answer preliminary. They do offer some free services, but there are also some services that are paid for, such as I believe the daycare. Yeah.
Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to bring this back around, what we're here for today is to look at the remaining capital budget pieces that need to be done to restore the building's functionality. Is that it?
That's correct. So the original budget was remediation only. And now we would like to expand that scope to include the restoration. So putting the drywall back in, finalizing the sump, restoring the bathroom, as well as adding the lift. So that would go into the existing budget. It wouldn't be a new one.
Is there a clear and pressing need for the lift at this point, to your knowledge?
No.
So in looking at this, we could be looking at $16,000 versus $66,000.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Kinghorn that council authorize additional work to proceed as per the budget approved on September 23rd, 2024 for the purpose of mold remediation at the BGC to include restoration of the space due to work from the mold remediation and replacement of the lift for a total estimated cost of $66,000, including contingency.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. You have the motion.
Questions, comments, concerns, amendments? Councillor Jones?
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Could we look at doing the remediation without the lift?
You absolutely can. That's what Councillor Smith was speaking to, so take this from, you can ask to amend the motion that Councillor Kinghorn has on the floor to exclude the lift and change the total estimated cost to $16,000.
Me? Yes, I would like to.
Okay, so Councillor Jones is going to put an amending motion on the floor, and then we can discuss that.
Mayor Snodgrass, I prefer if we defeat this motion, if that's the so wishes of council, and then introduce a new motion.
I'd rather leave it as is and have her amendment on the floor, and we will deal with the amendment itself. If her amendment passes, that changes the original motion. Achieves the same thing, so thank you. So Councillor Jones is asking to amend the original motion from Councillor Kinghorn, and the amendment would involve the removal. Well, it would reword the original. It would remove the replacement of the lift and change the total estimated cost to $16,000. That's what's on the floor from Councillor Jones. Conversation on that alone. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I could support that with the proviso that we could bring the conversation back around the use of the building, which I think begets the bigger conversation. To Councillor Walsh's point, being sooner rather than later.
Jenny, can you just remove your request to speak? Thank you. Councillor Nychuk.
Yeah, I also support the amendment to the motion, and along Councillor Smith's train of thought to revisiting that replacement reinstallment of the lift at a later date based on more discussion. If I'm not mistaken, that facility right now has inclusivity of accessibility to the main floor. And I would hate us to close the door on that kind of inclusivity in the future, but I would like to have a bigger discussion around the use of that building and how we do it. So at this time, yeah, I'm in favor of the amendment and decreasing the amount by the 50,000, but having further discussion about it in the future, so that we make sure we take care of the community in that regard if that facility makes sense to do that in. So,
Councillor Kinghorn.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. I'd be in favor of putting the lift in. I think as soon as we take this thing out, we're restricting people, right? There's a lot of people in this community that rely on wheelchair services, have limited abilities to move around. There's all kinds of things out there that we talk about being an inclusive community, and here we're going to restrict it for $50,000 people access to the building where they can go hang out with their friends, and they got pool tables and all that sort of fun stuff down there. So I'd be in favor of us leaving the wheelchair in there access, but I would say bring it back with reasons why, how much use, that sort of thing. Could you do that? Like, can they come, the operators? Can we have the operators come?
That's starting, just wait, Shelley. That's starting to get into how much are we going to charge them for rent. We're
Yeah,
not
no,
doing
no,
that
I don't
today.
want to,
Yeah, we're not doing that
I wouldn't
today.
go down that path.
This is about the amendment. Are you in favor or against removal of the lift and changing the cost to $16,000?
I'm against
You're
removal of
against
the
it.
lift.
Okay, we're going to vote in just a second here, but Councillor Barton.
Thank you, Mayor. The building is obviously designed, though, with a lift in mind. Obviously, you can peel that back, but I think then we open up a greater discussion that's not necessarily around what we're charging, but what actually the intent of the building was in the first place. And I guess it always had a lift. We took it out temporarily. I'm guessing a couple years it was decommissioned.
Well, it was decommissioned in 2009. It hasn't been there for some time.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. Kind of changes a little bit, but of town-owned buildings, is there any requirements for having lifts? Like, or maybe not town, but municipality-owned buildings? Like, do they have to have those accessibility measures put in place?
It would be a building code issue. So if you were building a building, then you would have to meet certain requirements. And that requirement, the building code would determine what that is.
Okay. I guess I'm still in favor of putting it in, because even if we postpone it, it's not going to make it cheaper. It's probably going to make it more expensive, because you're going to have to do all the work while the rest of the building is finished off. Right? You're doing this.
Not necessarily, because the shaft is already there. So we wouldn't remove the shaft. We would just basically close the door and lock it. We might remediate or pull out some of the old equipment, but the shaft would still be there. And so it could be reinstated at a future time. So we wouldn't decommission it to the point where we're tearing out walls or anything. We would leave the shaft there.
Okay. I'd still be in favor of it.
Councillor Walsh?
Thank you. I'm in favor of the lift in the building, as much as I'm in favor of the overall maintenance of the building. It is our obligation to maintain the facility as it is. However, at this time, I don't see it as a priority. The priority is to maintain for the health and safety and the users of that building. One other question I did have is, was there a specific ask or change in programming that brought this to the table? At what took us to the elevator to look at it after all those years? What?
That I don't know what instigated
Okay.
that. I know we were looking for reinstating it, and we were opening it up to get quotes, and that's what started. That's when we found the mold. I don't know what instigated that original.
I see, okay.
Sorry.
So the building is prepared and has always been with this lift. I don't think that we need to do it immediately. I think we need to remediate the mold. That was the concern here. And down the road, as we look at it as a whole, then the lift can be installed at a later date. I don't think it's a detriment, unless there's an immediate need. That was my question. Perhaps if the people with the BGC had a need right now and we're impairing their ability to operate by not having the lift, then respectfully, we want everybody to have access things. It just, to me, there's a whole bunch of other things. We entered into this to remediate and address the mold. And that's where I think we should leave it today.
Okay, I am strongly against the amendment. This is a building in the BGC group that rents the facility. We can talk about the rent value. We can talk about that number in the future. But, you know, this is absolutely always has been a certain level of a social endeavor for High River to be involved with in providing this facility, and we're doing it at $1 a year right now. But we can discuss in the future why it's what that number actually is. But if we don't put the lift in right now, we're going to be left with a hole because you're not patching up the shaft or anything, whatever's there. You're going to be left with that. The other part is once we do have the usage and the rent figured out, you're going to want to put the lift back in if you want to get the maximum value out of, and if you're changing renters, they're going to want to see a lift in there. So I don't get why we want to do it, other than the fact that when we sit at these desks, sometimes it feels good to stare at spreadsheets and stare at numbers and cut things out. You know, to say we reduced it from $66,000 to $16,000. Yay, we saved $50,000. But what did you actually do? You got a building now with a hole in it with no lift, and you're going to try to rent it. So I see this as, you know, yeah, the mold brought it to the forefront. We know it. We're remediating it, and we know we have a lift that doesn't work. It hasn't worked since 2009. I don't know why none of us knew about that, but regardless, we know about it today. So we're going to take the vote for the amendment here in just a second, but I will absolutely be voting against this amendment. Councillor Jones.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. I appreciate those, your perspective for sure, but there are lots of buildings that don't have a lift in it. They have stairs. They've used the stairs for years and years, and it does have accessibility. It has a ramp that goes around back to the top space. We didn't put a lift in the curling club, and that's a town-owned building. I don't know that it, in my opinion, is the most valuable use of the money, especially when we do look at some of the other things that need to be done. There's $50,000 in basement floor replacement, right? There's some exterior stuff, lighting. I'd rather see the floor replaced in that space, and I've been in it. The floor replaced and possibly some paint on the walls and make it look a little more presentable than a lift, in my personal opinion. Thank you.
So sorry, but the curling club comparison is completely unfair. That's like, we're talking $50,000 compared to a few $100,000 to do something for the curling club elevator. Wouldn't be a lift, it would be an elevator. So that's my stance stays. But Councillor Nychuk?
I don't think saying it's an unfair comparison is quite right. I can appreciate what you're saying. Since 2009, the elevator hasn't been accessible. I don't think any councillor here is saying no to the elevator. They're saying no to the spend right now based on need. So right now, from what I know, 2009 to present, I have never had a member of the community come to me or this council and say the elevator at the Boys and Girls Club doesn't work. I need it to work. So personally, I'm not saying no to the elevator. I'm just wanting more information to decide on the use and the longevity of that building and what we're doing with it. I don't think anybody sitting here forgoes the inclusive nature that we have to have as people, residents, municipalities, provinces, nations, to the people that have situations that make things, you know, they need that type of help to make themselves mobile. I don't think any of us are saying no to that. At least I want to make it clear that I'm not saying no to that. It's just having the information in front of us to make that decision. Is it the right building? Because perhaps going back to the curling rink idea, maybe that $50,000 is better spent at the Snodgrass Center putting a lift in than putting it at the Boys and Girls Club. So I don't see that they're two entirely different things. I see it as need for the community and where it's best spent.
Any idea on the difference if we do it now or later? I'm always of the opinion, kind of like with Councillor Barton, that if once you're in and you start in construction and everything, that the more you can do at that time, the cheaper it's going to be in the long run rather than starting and stopping.
No, I can never anticipate what inflation or whatnot will be. That said, I don't think doing it at a later date would be that disruptive to the facility. Like I said, would leave the shaft intact. The shaft is already drywalled on the outside. We would leave that in place, and they would work in that part of the facility.
I'm fully aware. I just threw you a question that's absolutely impossible to answer. So
it's okay.
As usual, Riley.
Contingency.
Councillor Barton.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, one thing though that might be interesting is to note is that we could potentially, this could be part of the whole tariff piece, right? A product that's coming across the borders. I don't know if elevators are made in Canada or not, right? These elevators. Is this something that could get a tariff on it, right? I don't know.
Ask Danielle. So the amending motion is to change the original motion from Councillor Kinghorn, and the amending motion would change it to read, for the purpose of mold remediation at the BGC, to include the mold remediation at a total estimated cost of $16,000. So we are removing $50,000 in financial, and we are removing the replacement of the lift. All those in favor of the amending motion? Those opposed? Motion carries. So we're back to voting on the original motion that council authorized additional work to proceed as per the budget approved on September 23rd, 2024 at the BGC to include restoration and mold remediation for a total estimated cost of $16,000, including contingency. All those in favor? Does not, did I throw the lift in there?
Well, no, you said the original motion.
Yeah, but I just I just changed the original motion, right? The way I read that. I just changed the original motion, which is what we're voting on now. We only voted on the amendment to amend the original motion, right?
So it's not the original.
It's not the original motion. It's the original motion as amended.
Okay.
So removal of $50,000 financial and removal of the lift replacement. Okay? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. No lift, you got 16 grand. Have a good time.
Thank you.
Council disclosure summary report. Sharon?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. As required by the Council Disclosure Bylaw, each councillor is to file a council disclosure statement with the Chief Administrative Officer by the last working day of January in each year. Council disclosure statements were filed by all councillors by November 30th, 2024, and have been reviewed by the Chief Administrative Officer. There were no statements of changes filed. Administration recommends that Council accept the Chief Administrative Officer's 2024 Council Disclosure Summary Report as presented. Does Council have any questions or comments regarding the Council Disclosure Summary Report?
I see none. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Walsh that Council accept the summary report as presented by the CAO as required by the Council Disclosure Bylaw 4125/2005.
I'll give you that motion.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. Strategic priorities chart, Chris?
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. So before you today is the revised strategic priorities chart that Council worked on December 2nd. Because of the Christmas break, we didn't get a chance to get this to you beforehand. On it is not necessarily a change to the top 5 priorities besides some timelines, but changes to what's on your next list as well as what's in advocacy sections of your priority chart. So the priority chart has been greatly reduced on the next list and reduced down to about 5 items. And if you take a look at, where is it? The 5th page of the report, you'll see that on the next list it retains doctor retention and attraction, new engineering and development standards, CP lands, refining the design, tourism, and the new public workshop site design. On the advocacy piece and the partnerships, we've reduced that from about 10 different advocacy pieces down to the CMRB and its future, coal mining and the provincial policy, Rimrock Biodigester, the hearing that's coming up, as well as the Foothills Youth Hub and the funding model associated with that. While there's other minor changes throughout the rest of the chart on the organizational side, they all lean into the fact that it creates our work program for the upcoming year and will kind of form into an annual report that we'll report back to Council on progress later this year as well. So based upon that, the Council has 3 options to consider. 1, to move forward with the recommendation as presented. 2, to defeat the motion as presented and go back and talk about your strategic priorities at a strategic meeting, or to refer this to a COW meeting for further discussion in the open public. And that's the rationale for the recommendation before you.
Thanks, Chris. Any questions? Comments? It's pretty clear. We're the ones that did it. So. Ask for a motion from Councillor Smith that Council adopt the updated top 5 strategic priorities as follows: recycling and composting program, skate park draft concept, town farm outdoor rink, 112th Street area structure plan, water strategy as the top 5, and that Council adopt the updated strategic priorities chart and work program as presented.
I'll give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Councillor reports. Anything for council? Special. I got one, and it's a recognition of, we received a $50,000 donation to go directly towards the pool expansion, and that donation was received from Wendy and Gordon Cartwright, longtime High River area residents. Of course, Cartwright name is infamous to High River. But they have the D Ranch west of High River out by the Bayou, west of the Bayou. But Wendy's a longtime pool user and is very, very excited for the expansion of the pool and wanted to be a part of it. And we very much appreciate the donation of $50,000 from the Cartwright family. So thank you very much to Wendy and Gordon. Anything else from council? Board and committee reports, anything? None. Board and committee minutes, there's Museum of the Highwood meeting minutes. And now I will open it to public comments. Anybody? We know your name, Maureen. I got you. You got it on? Kurt?
I actually wasn't going to say anything today. Figure that. But, Craig, you have to realize that you do not vote unless there is a tie. I don't...
That's incorrect.
No.
That's incorrect. That's 100% incorrect. The mayor has a vote just like anybody else on this council. I was elected as a voting participant in this council just like everybody else. I'm not a tiebreaker.
Well...
That's incorrect.
That was my comment.
Okay, thanks, Maureen. Don't really know what that pertained to, but... Foothills Country Hospice, Heartbeat of Hospice, Radiothon sponsorship request. The hospice does a number of fundraisers every year, and in the past, we have always declined lots of the smaller fundraisers, and we always want to be a part of their larger hospice fundraising gala that they do every fall, and we put a large sponsorship in there to support that facility, as important as it is. So my recommendation is my vote is to not sponsor this request. Any other comments? It's because we do the big one. All good? I'll move on. Now Road Home Society letter of support request. Jamie, do you want to speak to this one, Barton? As to where it came from?
I had Kim Courtney, who's the executive director of Narrow Road Home, ask last week if the town would consider a letter of support for a grant that they are I'm just looking to see if it's in there, sorry. A grant anyways that they're applying for from the Alberta government, and it's just for providing the grant was called for combating trafficking in persons grant. This is to provide safe and supportive housing and stabilization on an ongoing mental health support for women escaping traffic and sexual exploitation. So the grant that they're applying for is in the amount of $225,000, and I just brought it to the council to see if they would support it, because one of the mechanisms in the Alberta grant application is to have municipality support the grant application. So that's why I asked for it to be on this agenda.
Perfect. Thanks, Jamie. Councillor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Barton, for bringing this to council. I can only hope that all the members of our community know of the work that they do at the Narrow Road Home. Kim gives tirelessly, and they do really offer a great program. It's not just about getting people off the street, watching the different businesses that they start up so that individuals coming through recovery can also take on work. So their involvement with everybody here in the community, the Narrow Road Home as a whole, I'm happy to give a letter of support.
Nothing further. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Barton that Council authorize the Mayor to sign the letter of support for Narrow Road Home Society's application for combating trafficking in persons, CTIP grant, in the amount of $225,000.
Yeah, my motion, Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Council correspondence for information, a letter from High River District Healthcare Foundation, Prime Minister's Awards, teacher and educator nominations, correspondence regarding Rimrock Feedlot, correspondence regarding the New Year's fireworks. And I also want to put a huge shout out to the staff that put together those fireworks, Chris and Heather and the fire department, everybody that was involved in it. This is the first time it's kind of been brought up for years and years and years as to why don't we do anything for New Year's, but that was fantastic what you guys did, what you and your staff did, Chris. So it made it a lot of fun. My kids were sick, but we were able to watch it out of the bedroom window, so they absolutely loved it. But and I know people in the far east, Linda didn't get to see it from yours, but you guys get Canada Day over there. Did you really? From your place? Yeah. Yeah, I knew that. That's great. I'm glad you enjoyed them. Well, that's good. Even better. Anything else from council? Meeting adjourned, 4:12 p.m.